Our heroes land on Tatooine near the outskirts of a city. Obi-Wan is staying behind with the ship to guard the Queen, Qui-Gon telling them not to send any transmissions. He, Jar Jar, and R2-D2 head out towards the city to obtain a hyperdrive generator for their ship, but the Queen also dispatches one of her handmaidens, Padme, to come with and learn more about the planet. Qui-Gon doesn't want her to come along. "I've been trained in defense. I can take care of myself."
"This is not a good idea. Stay close to me."
Padme gets into no problems whatsoever. Instead, it's the other companion who's tagging along who gets into trouble. This right here is where Jar Jar was make or break, and mainly why he doesn't work. In my opinion, Jar Jar's presence does not positively impact the story. His antics do nothing to advance the plot, nor does he provide helpful or insightful commentary on the Jedi, the Republic, anything like that, which would be good for the audience. He's not even really some big connection to the Gungans. Well, he needed to be there to have them meet the Gungans and get them transport to the capital. Yeah, because it was written that way. Lucas could have just put them down right outside the city. One could also wonder, wait, why did they even land on the other side of the planet anyway? But I'm guessing they were securing some other major Naboo city. It's a big planet. I'm assuming they have lots of cities. Not very many people in them, but cities. More on that later. Now, Jar Jar is not pointless. As we've established, he's comic relief, and comic relief is a purpose. In Empire Strikes Back, 3PO served as comic relief without any other purpose in the story, and it worked really well. Jar Jar, however, does not. Comic relief needs to be handled delicately. Too much of it and everything becomes a farce, or just frustrating. And that happens with Jar Jar. He shows up way too often and at the worst parts. Comic relief needs to be paced properly, there to relieve tension or provide levity to an otherwise serious situation. 3PO's form of comic relief is his snootiness, someone who thinks way too highly of himself getting taken down a peg. Jar Jar is an idiot. His comic relief comes in the funny way he talks and in slapstick occurring because of his buffoonery. And again, that can work. There are plenty of Hollywood movies where the focus is on someone who's a complete moron for 2 hours, but again, too much, too quickly, and our heroes look absolutely incompetent when they bring him with them for no reason. He's an amphibious being that is going along on this quest to a desert city. As far as we have seen, he has no bartering skills, he's not particularly strong to act as muscle, nor is he technically inclined so as to have special knowledge for the equipment they need. So why is he there? I did love the Darth Jar Jar theory from a few years ago, but we know it's bullcrap. If that had been the plan, Lucas wouldn't have dialed him back in the following movies. He would have kept him in so he could retroactively go, see, that's why. Also, Lucas just isn't that great of a writer to think of it. Anyway, they make it to town where Jar Jar steps in some poop, I'm not even joking this time, and Qui-Gon says they'll try looking for the hyperdrive in one of the smaller dealers. They meet Watto, this weird mixture of a fly and a tapir, and his slave, some kid who I'm sure isn't important at all. Are you an angel? Did it hurt when you fell from heaven? He explains how he and his mom are slaves, and we get this weird panel of him with a purple glow around him and his mouth kind of hanging open. I don't get it. Anyway, Watto has the hyperdrive generator they need, but Qui-Gon says he only has Republic currency, which isn't any good out here.
Credits will do fine.
No, they won't.
Credits will do fine.
No, they won't. What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that? I'm a Toydarian! Mind tricks don't work on me! Only money!
Okay, how about lightsabers? Do you take lightsaber blades?
No money, no parts, no deal. And no one else has a T-14 hyperdrive, I promise you that. Only because they use proprietary components. I bet there's a tutorial on Space YouTube to build a custom one. Okay, let's talk about Qui-Gon, because this right here is a big issue. As has been pointed out by others, he could just trade in their existing ship for money and get a smaller ship, or even just use Republic credits to hire someone to transport them to Coruscant. After all, smugglers, traders, and other people probably still do business in the Republic, and they should be happy to get that kind of money. This is a pretty big plot hole, and while I'm loath to just describe a movie as bad because of plot holes, this is a significantly bad one, because him not exploring these other solutions and needing to follow the actual scheme that happens makes up a good chunk of the movie. But hey, let's say for the sake of argument that they don't trust that they wouldn't be betrayed to the Federation and can't pursue that option. We have a bigger issue with Qui-Gon here, and in turn, kind of a problem with the entire prequel trilogy. It is argued that one of the overarching points of the prequels is that there is an imbalance in the Force by the Jedi being in control, what with there being so many light side users and so few dark side users. That in turn, the story is about the fall of the Jedi because of their hubris, their growing inability to use the Force, and their willingness to compromise their morality during this time. This is best exemplified in Qui-Gon during parts of this movie. It's one thing to mind trick bad guys so you can slip past them to serve the greater good, but Qui-Gon is perfectly willing to use his powers to get what he wants. He did it with Boss Nass, and he tried to do it with Watto, basically steal from him to get the parts he needs. He doesn't know anything about Watto. He doesn't know if he's just some guy trying to make a decent life for himself, but he's perfectly happy to steal from him. But hey, even if he knows he's an utter scumbag, why not just find some other scumbag on the streets to steal the money from who isn't immune to mind tricks and exchange the money? We'll talk some more about this later and throughout the rest of the prequel reviews, but yeah, Qui-Gon is not well written. Anyway, they decide to leave, with Watto telling Anakin he can leave after he cleans some racks. Yippee! Yeah, I would have loved to have been on set when they filmed this scene so I could ask George Lucas why he thought this was a good decision. Qui-Gon contacts Obi-Wan and wonders if there's anything else they can trade for cash. A few containers of supplies, the Queen's wardrobe maybe. I really hope the wardrobe was already on board the ship when they took it, because I'd hate to think they slowed down their escape so they could grab more ridiculous clothes for her to wear. Jar Jar, being ever helpful, decides to just randomly grab some alien frog to eat, but spits it out when the shopkeeper tells him he has to pay for that. It lands in the soup of Sebulba, a pod racer who gets ready to tear Jar Jar apart, but Anakin convinces him to leave it be.
Nevertheless, the boy is right. You were heading into trouble. And no one would ever want bad things to happen to you, Jar Jar.
A sandstorm starts brewing, and Anakin volunteers to bring our heroes to his home for safety, since they won't make it back to the ship in time. Mom, I'm home! These are my friends, Mom! I decided to invite total strangers into the house, Mom! Anakin brings R2 and Padme back to his room to show off the droid he's building. C-3PO. I don't understand the logic of this. When did Lucas decide, yeah, Darth Vader built C-3PO, that makes sense? How is this an improvement? At best, it's fanficky, but most fanfics at least have some sort of reason to have these kind of goofy, illogical connections. Like, does this say something about 3PO's character? Or Anakin's? I'd say Anthony Daniels was just under contract to appear and he couldn't think of any other way of including 3PO in the story, but even I can come up with a few. He's a protocol droid. He could be in Amidala's court too. Or maybe he's helping out the Queen at the Senate or something. There are so many other ways they could have done it, but nope. Anakin built C-3PO for some reason. Whatever, back on the ship, the Queen's minister, or whoever, says that there's a massive death toll on the planet and that she needs to contact them as soon as possible. Naturally, Obi-Wan says to send no reply whatsoever, that it's bait to establish a trace on them. Is it a trick? Kind of. Later, when we see Naboo, it looks like it's in pretty decent shape. People are just being held at gunpoint, but no signs of civilians or anything along those lines, and certainly none of them suffering. Her people apparently consist of her handmaidens, a few politicians, and some fighter pilots. Maybe all of Naboo is just one big, overly elaborate castle? Apparently they were somehow able to get a trace, and Darth Maul is dispatched to Tatooine to get the Queen. At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge. I'm not supposed to like to tell us what you're getting revenge for, huh? I mean, I know this is your only line in the entire movie, but world building, history, some insight into the Sith? Anyway, back at Anakin's place, he talks about how he's the only human who can do pod racing, a sport on the planet.
You must have Jedi reflexes if you race pods. This makes me very sad for some reason.
Anakin recognizes Qui-Gon as a Jedi after seeing his lightsaber. I had a dream I was a Jedi. I came back here and freed all the slaves. Have you come to free us?
No, I'm afraid not.
I think you have. Why else would you be here?
Oh boy, Say, I heard you built a robot, kid. I'd love to see it and end this conversation immediately.
They discuss the situation, and Anakin's mother, Shmi,
Yes, with our proud Skywalker family name, I shall name our daughter Shmi.
suggests that gambling is the weakness of traitors like Watto. Everyone bets on pod racing here, and Anakin has been secretly building a racer. Shmi doesn't want him to do it, and for once, Qui-Gon has the good sense to say no as well, not wanting to risk the kid's life. But Anakin's got this. Mom, you said that the biggest problem in the universe is no one helps each other. Yes, well, maybe when the Jedi come to help free the slaves, we can talk. No, apparently this is enough to convince her. No, there is no other way. I may not like it, but he can help you. He was meant to help you. I know this because shut up. Padme's against the plan and says the Queen won't approve.
The Queen doesn't need to know.
Watto agrees to the race since Qui-Gon puts up their ship as collateral. The ship that belongs to the Queen and not to him. If they lose, Watto gets the ship, but if they win, Watto can keep the money as long as Qui-Gon gets the hyperdrive. Later, Qui-Gon talks to Shmi about Anakin.
He has special powers. He can see things before they happen. It is a Jedi trait. The Force is unusually strong with him.
So let me postulate a different way this could have played out that would have filled that plot hole about Qui-Gon selling the ship and getting a smaller one or whatever. Picture this. Qui-Gon fails to exchange his Republic credits with Watto, but then he spots Anakin working in the yard. All of a sudden, a wall of junk behind Anakin is about to fall on him, but Qui-Gon sees Anakin not only anticipate this, but use the Force to push it back, purely on instinct. Anakin is clearly exhausted and overtaxed by this ordeal, but even at this young age, he's powerful with the Force, and, as Qui-Gon says,
he can anticipate things before they happen.
If he tries to bargain for another ship or hire another ship, that means he gets away from Anakin, who he wants to take back to the Jedi. And thus, that becomes his character goal for this sequence and easily fixes the plot hole. It helps show why he's going to ridiculous lengths for a ludicrous plan. He knows he can get Anakin out of this too and doesn't want to risk coming back for him later. It also gives us a chance to actually see Anakin being strong with the Force like Qui-Gon suggests he is. We only know it because he says it, and let's face it, Qui-Gon has not exactly wowed us so far as such a great and noble Jedi.
Credits will do fine indeed. Who was the father?
There was no father. I can't explain what happened.
Nothing weird about that, just Space Jesus down in here.
This episode is going to be long enough as it is, so we'll get into the virgin birth thing when we get to Revenge of the Sith, but needless to say, it's just a dumb, unnecessary idea. The fact that Qui-Gon even asks bugs me. It's clearly meant as a way to try to establish if there was some Force user in his lineage, because that gets passed down. It's the divine right of kings bullcrap, implying he's special because of who his dad was. But whatever. She asks if there's any way he can help him, but he isn't sure. Later that evening, he takes a sample of his blood and sends it to Obi-Wan for examination. Specifically, a midi-chlorian count. The reading's off the chart. Over 10,000. Feel like I should be making an over 9,000 joke right now, as old a meme as it is. Oh well, might as well. It's over 9,000. Hey, wait. Is that a regular-ass microscope Obi-Wan's looking into? Darth Maul arrives and checks out the area with his space binoculars.
The next day, on the cliffs above Mos Espa, a lone Sith Lord stands, observing the city below.
Damn it to hell, there isn't a park and ride anywhere around here. At the race prep, Watto admits that he's bet all of his money on Sebulba to win, since Sebulba always wins, and Qui-Gon decides to take that bet, offering his pod against the freedom of Anakin and his mother if Sebulba wins or loses. Watto's willing to do it for one of them, but not both, using a die to determine which of the two it is. Naturally, Qui-Gon uses the Force to cheat, so it's Anakin. The race starts up, though despite the comic leaving out Sebulba sabotaging Anakin's racer, they do leave in it stalling at first in the starting gate. Since I'm not going to give a play-by-play of the race, let's talk about the movie's version of it. One of the things that a lot of people who hate the Phantom Menace will say is that even if they dislike the rest of the movie, that they still like the pod racing. This was common even when the movie was fresh. People loved the pod race scene. And I have to be contrarian because I do not. I'd be okay with it except for the fact that it is way, way too long. If we go by when Anakin actually gets going to when he wins the race, it's 9 minutes. Longer if we include the surrounding bits. I have had episodes of this show shorter than the pod race scene, and I'm a colossal windbag in case you hadn't noticed by how long this episode is. It just goes on and on and on, and you only get music near the end. A race like this is supposed to be fast, intense, and exciting, but it just lasts so long it starts getting boring. You know, the original Death Star trench run in A New Hope actually had 3 attempts to shoot the torpedo into the exhaust port to help emphasize how desperate a plan this was. They cut it down to 2 trench runs because the pacing was awful. If they just cut the pod race in half, a good 5-minute sequence, I'd be fine. But 9 to 10 minutes? It's too much. The comic at least understands this, cuts it down to about 3 or 4 pages. Admittedly, that's probably a bit shorter than it needs to be, but it hits the highlights and keeps the excitement. Boom, done. And yeah, Anakin wins. It's so wonderful, Annie. You have brought hope to those who have none. How? God, one panel he's all happy and excited, and the next he looks utterly depressed. What the hell, comic? The parts get delivered to the ship, but Qui-Gon has to head back to go pick up Anakin. Why do I sense we've picked up another pathetic life form? God, not even the other characters like Jar Jar. That's harsh. Qui-Gon gives Anakin some cash.
These are yours. We sold the pod.
I hope you asked the kid before you did that, since it was, you know, his pod. They let Anakin know he's been freed and he can come with them to become a Jedi. He's reluctant to leave his mom behind, and honestly, this is one of the better bits of this movie. It's only natural he wouldn't want to leave her. Although it's weird how apparently he can't, get some cash from the Republic or the Jedi that'd work on this planet and then come back and buy her freedom. You'd think they'd be okay with that, especially with what happens later. He also says goodbye to 3PO. For whatever reason, he's leaving him behind. Don't know why he can't come along, but whatever. See you in the next movie, dude. The spy droids that Darth Maul sent out detect the Jedi, and he flies off in his Scooty Puff Jr. to intercept them first. There's a brief battle between Maul and Qui-Gon, forcing him to leap into the ship as they make their escape. Obi-Wan and Anakin formally meet. Hi, you're a Jedi too? Pleased to meet you.
Well, strike me down. Pleased to meet you too.
After a brief look at Naboo to confirm that the people are starving, it's been like 2 days max. Do none of these people have fridges? We have another good scene, this time to set up things between Anakin and Padme. Anakin is cold, not used to an environment that isn't a desert. Since Anakin's not sure if he'll ever see Padme again, he gives her a little necklace he carved for her. What does not work about this scene is that it's supposed to be helping set up the future romance between these characters. As the Weird Al parody pointed out, the age gap is iffy. From what I've heard, Lucas decided that Anakin should be this young because it was the age where the separation from his mother would impact him the most. If he was much older, it supposedly wouldn't affect him as much to be separated from her. I get the reasoning, but I personally disagree with this, especially if, say, he knew she was still a slave. Even as a teenager, he should be close enough to her given their situation that all this would bother him. It also really confused me when I was a kid when later on they say Anakin is too old to begin the Jedi training. And I'm just baffled. Sure, we see pretty young kids in Jedi training, but honestly it feels even more unbelievable that 3 to 6-year-olds have the discipline for this stuff. Teenager? I can buy that as too old. This is nothing. They arrive at Coruscant. The entire planet is one big city, which just makes gridlock all the worse, I think. And they're met at a landing platform by Senator Palpatine and Chancellor Valorum. They're calling a special session of the Senate to hear about the invasion, while Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan head to the Jedi Council. First priority for Amidala, though, shove a fan on her head and change clothes so she looks like a friggin' geisha. Palpatine says there's little chance of the Senate voting to intervene, that over time, the Republic has become a bunch of greedy, squabbling delegates and bureaucrats with no interest in the common good. The Chancellor has very little power to do anything.
I'm the government, I'm the reason nothing works.
Despite the Chancellor being their strongest supporter, Palpatine suggests calling for a vote of no confidence in Valorum to elect a new Chancellor who can push through support to stop the Federation. We cut over to the Jedi Temple, where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are being debriefed by the Jedi Council.
There's too much happening here. My only conclusion can be that it was a Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium. I mean, can you imagine an evil force returning in this franchise? They order Qui-Gon to stay with the Queen. We will use all our resources here to unravel this mystery. We will discover the identity of your attacker. And by that, I mean we're gonna sit around in these comfy chairs and not actually do anything. It's one of the real benefits of being on the council. Qui-Gon brings up Anakin and how he has the highest midichlorian concentration he's ever seen in a life form. In fact, believing that the midichlorians actually conceived him.
Shmi said that they took her out to dinner first, went to the movies, had a really good time.
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. You believe it's this boy? This prophecy, which of course we never learn any details about, could have been extraordinarily useful in the later movies, but they don't use it, and that kind of annoys me. We'll save that for one of the other episodes, though. Instead, let's talk about another idea for how they could have done Anakin. As mentioned, there's that huge plot hole about not just selling their ship and getting another one, or booking passage on another ship. How about they go that route? But on board this smuggler's ship or whatever, make him a teenage stock boy or assistant. That way the age gap isn't as extreme. We see him as a cocky young kid with all this power. To supplement the pod race, you could have him be in a dangerous situation, either being pursued or chasing through an asteroid field or something, and he has to take the controls and pilot them to safety. That shows off that the kid has piloting skills as per Obi-Wan's "he was the best star pilot in the galaxy" and all that, instead of what we get later. Anyway, Qui-Gon requests that the boy be tested, and they agree to do so. Speaking of, Anakin stops by the Queen's quarters to try to see Padme one last time before he goes off to the Jedi Temple and wanted to say goodbye, but the Queen says she's been sent off on an errand. No doubt to find some more hairspray to keep those Sailor Moon pigtails of hers up like that. And thus it's time for the Senate scene. Palpatine and Amidala have come to state their case concerning the invasion. The Trade Federation objects to this a couple of times, and okay, her latest outfit was already kind of silly, but why the hell did they need to add the high shoulders? Did Strife and the Batman from the Technus Imperative stop by and tell her, "No, make your shoulders really tall. It makes you intimidating"?
There. Sure glad I don't look stupid in this.
Anyway, the Trade Federation representative says there's no proof of the allegations about invasion and that they need to send a commission to ascertain the truth, aka caring more about the civility and rules of procedure than actually helping. As Palpatine points out, Valorum will concede to these demands. He asks Amidala if she'll defer her motion so they can send someone to investigate. What about those two Jedi representatives who were there? The ones the Chancellor requested be sent? You can't say they've got a bias. They're not from Naboo and have no political stake in whoever wins. Or can they not come in because they were a secret? I will not defer. I have come before you to resolve this attack on our sovereignty now. I was not elected to watch my people suffer and die while you discuss this invasion in a committee. I was elected to be the most fabulous-looking person on Naboo, and damn it, I'm succeeding! She calls for a vote of no confidence, and the rest of the Senate seems to agree with her. So a repeated criticism of this movie, and the prequels overall, is that it's too boring, too much talk, too much about trade negotiations and long-winded tax debates, and yeah, that's horse crap. That is not really a problem with this movie. There is one scene taking place in the Senate. It is 2.5 minutes long in a 2-hour, 16-minute movie. It is by no means a good scene, most certainly, but it is not the end-all, be-all descriptor of why these movies don't work. It exists to fulfill its purpose, establish that the Republic is not going to help, and to set up Palpatine's takeover of the Republic. We're not watching a Senate filibuster here. It's not an issue that the scene exists. But, you know what doesn't work with this? The acting. And I don't just mean in the movie. It's a problem in the comic, too. Amidala is so stiff and lifeless. She's supposed to be angrily proclaiming that she's not gonna let this crap go, but she looks utterly bored. And I'm sorry, but the non-acting and lack of emotion is not helped by the fact that she looks like a clown! While the movies are unfairly maligned as being about trade negotiations and Senate debates, a lack of passion in this scene makes it come across like a boring procedural meeting on C-SPAN 3. Political intrigue in science fiction can work just fine. It can be interesting and engaging even for little kids because it's ultimately about friends and enemies and cunning maneuvers. As a reminder, we had almost 10 minutes of space NASCAR. These movies do not lack action scenes. It's just a scene we've been building up to get Amidala here. The point of the first half of the movie instead just has Emmett Kelly calmly reciting the Gettysburg Address. Outside the council chambers, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan discuss Anakin. Obi-Wan doesn't think Anakin will pass the council's test. Do not defy the council, Master. Not again.
I will do what I must, Obi-Wan.
If you would just follow the code, you'd be on the council. They will not go along with you this time. Okay, and this dialogue right here is pretty much the indication of why Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan don't work in this story. We are told that Qui-Gon has this tendency to defy the Jedi Council, act independently of them, doing things the Council would not approve of. That's a perfectly fine idea. Show that his decision to train Anakin is because of his own arrogance and independence. And he is arrogant. I joke with the Qui-Gon is wrong counter, but he does keep reiterating to Padme on Tatooine,
I know what I'm doing. Just shut up and do what I say.
That would actually fit more in with Qui-Gon's less than moral attitude of attempted theft and mind control. But that attitude is never called out, and Liam Neeson's performance is not as a reckless, arrogant, morally questionable figure, but as a wise, stoic, seasoned master. It feels like him and Obi-Wan should be reversed. Obi-Wan questions Qui-Gon all the time and is the one concerned about the Council's approval, as if he was Qui-Gon's little brother worried about their parents finding out about something bad they did. And indeed, they changed the characterization of Obi-Wan in the later prequels so that he's more ready to fly off the handle and clearly not ready to train someone. So it seems like they took that lesson to heart, but it doesn't fix the fact that in this movie, the two are written so badly. Anyway, the test. They leave out him using the Force to psychically ascertain what's on the display screen, though Mace Windu, aka Samuel L. Jackson, is still holding it, and go straight to Yoda's fear speech. Afraid, are you? No, sir. Your thoughts dwell on your mother. I miss her. Afraid to lose her, I think. If a Jedi you were, never would you be afraid of losing loved ones. Messed up, that isn't at all. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. He's not entirely wrong, but anger also can lead to drive and dedication. Fear can lead to preparation and bravery. I don't know, I get how it can lead to the dark side, but it feels like friggin' Green Lanterns have a better grasp of this stuff.